if you look at tennis as a game, it's a fairly lonely game. Off-court drama, with the whole Novak, the crowd booing him.
I wanted someone else to come in and challenge the whole Sinner and Alcaraz era. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Off the Bench with RGT. Today we will be discussing the Australian Open, the first Grand Slam of 2025. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Dev back on the show. I think it's his third time on the show. So Dev, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. Thank you for having me back on the show. I think just before the show, we've been discussing how consistent you've been at this. So congratulations on all the progress that you made. Super excited to nerd out on some tennis with you today.
Super, thank you. And I can promise the next time you're on the show, we will be discussing your paddle championships.
Look forward to it, brother.
Okay, so Dev, let's dive right in. Tell me, what are your generic thoughts about this year's Australian Open?
I think this year's Australian Open, the first Grand Slam of the year, I think it's gotten all the elements that you'd expect from a Grand Slam, right? Early upsets, some unbelievable points being played, off-court drama, with the whole Novak, the crowd booing him, him refusing to speak to the presenter, for the after-match ceremony. And surprisingly, actually, what stood out for me this Australian Open was the introduction of coaching pods, which, if you look at tennis as a game, it's a fairly lonely game. You don't interact with a coach or with a teammate. So having that support system right by you, I think was a good call. Specifically seeing Murray and Djoko's partnership around that was also pretty exciting.
Absolutely, man. I think that was my main takeaway from this year's Australian Open, just to see two past rivals literally in the same box, talking to each other on how they can win a match, and potentially the Grand Slam was crazy to see. And the pods point you made is absolutely bang on. We've seen it in the Davis Cup for years.
Correct.
So didn't understand why it was not there in the Grand Slams, right?
Correct.
So it was high time they kind of did that. So yeah, great. Okay, Dev, since the Fab 4 or at least the Fab 3 have retired and Djokovic, I would say, is towards the end of his career, we've seen a generation of the Sinners, the Alcaraz, the Zverevs, and a few more that have come up. Finally, they've started winning some Grand Slams. But now there's already talk of the generation after that, right? There's some bright young talent on tour that we can see. But who kind of stood out for you? Who are the ones that stood out for you and you feel that they will have a bright future ahead and they will go, toe-to-toe with the likes of Zverev and Sinner and Alcaraz?
Yeah. No, man, I think just tennis, seeing some of this new talent come up is super exciting, right? For me specifically, Ben Shelton stands out, right? I love his athleticism on court. He's always out there ready to sort of chase a drop ball, chase those hard baseline shots. Massive serve, touching almost 240k, which is unheard of. Great forehand. Very reminiscent of a young Nadal, right? Creates beautiful angles when playing the inside-out forehand. Just some of the shots he's been hitting or was hitting, through the tournament was absolutely insane. And I like his overall attitude. I like that he cheers himself on for every point. I like that he stares down his opponents. So Ben Shelton personally is very exciting. I did catch a glimpse of João Fonseca. I think he's a young Brazilian guy coming through. There's a lot of talk around him, in the tour as well, on the tour as well. Brazil, I don't think has produced a Grand Slam champion after Gustavo Kuerten, who'd won his last Roland Garros, in 2001. So there's a lot of chatter around that. So I'm excited to see that. But one game and, another player that stood out was Lerner Tien, the 19-year-old American guy, again, left-handed, just playing his first Grand Slam, tournament. He was playing juniors till I think 18 months ago. So just seeing him play, his calmness, again, forehand, very reminiscent of, you know, a Nadal forehand, but a very strong backhand slice as well. So these are the 2-3 players that I'm super excited to watch out, you know, over the next 4 to 5 years, who I think consistently can, you know, give a run for the money to Sinner and Alcaraz. What about you? Who do you enjoy watching play? You know, who are you most excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take three names, in fact, one of which I don't think did very well this year. Casper Ruud, I think he's
Yeah.
from Denmark or Norway.
Yeah.
I think he's fantastic. He's
Yeah.
given a couple of fights to the big boys previously as well. I looked up to the best, I think trained with the best as well. But I think he has a future for sure, even though he didn't really perform in this year's Australian Open. And the two, Ben Shelton for sure, that guy's something else, honestly. He needs to improve his backhand though, I feel.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
his service and forehand and are superb, and him cheering himself on is a big factor. Today actually, before the semi-final against Sinner, I saw something very not strange, but it's probably the first time I've seen a tennis player do it. Before he came on to court, he had his headphones on and he was just listening to music, I
Yeah.
guess pumping himself on or
Yeah.
calming himself down, however
Yeah.
you want to put it. So that shows that, you know, he talks to himself a lot to
In
keep
the
him
zone.
going, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
Ben Shelton and his opponent in the quarterfinals, Sonego, I think he needs to fix himself up mentally a little bit, but he's talented. Some of the shots that he was hitting against Shelton in the quarterfinal
Yeah.
were insane. I remember Shelton kept lobbing him, he
Yeah.
kept running back, and weird winners, right? Like
Wild,
unheard
just
of.
going
like,
back and unseen winners, correct? I remember that point.
Exactly. So, yeah. So Sonego again, pretty raw, but you can see that the guy is talented. So these 2-3 players for sure to look out. But I think the main one out of this lot is going to be Ben Shelton for sure. And actually, one more name. I'm forgetting. I think was it Jack Draper, the guy
the
from
British
England.
guy. Yeah.
The British guy, yeah, I think
Yeah.
he's pretty talented as well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talk on tour about, you know, him being definitely the next big British star in
Yeah.
the game of tennis after Andy Murray.
Yeah.
So let's see what he has up his sleeve as well.
You know, a great point that I read online actually, there are probably a couple of people that, you know, are in the circuit that we actually aren't keeping a tab on. Novak
Yeah.
won his first Grand Slam as a 20-year-old and didn't win another slam, you know, for the next 3 years. So I feel
Correct.
like you have you have this crop of Taylor Fritz, Holger Rune,
Yeah.
like you said, Casper Ruud. I feel one slam and, you know, they can also sort of come up and have that phase of dominance of, like, you know, 5-7 years, the way sort of a Del Potro
Absolutely.
and some of these other guys had in the Novak Nadal era.
Absolutely, Dev. And I think that is where Jannik Sinner is probably one step ahead of these people. He won his
Yeah.
2 Grand Slams in 2024, and you see where he's at. Like,
Yeah.
mentally, he just believes he's the best player in the world right now, and he's playing like that,
Yeah.
right? So I think
Yeah.
you're bang on when you say that one Grand Slam kind of kicks you on, at least when you're at that young
Yeah.
age. You believe
Yeah.
that you can compete with the best. So yeah,
Yeah.
point taken. There have a lot of crazy matches in this year's Australian Open. I mean, from the first round all the way up until the finals. But which match stood out for you?
I think there were a couple of matches that stood out for me. One match was that guy we were speaking about, Tien versus Medvedev. 5-setter, 19-year-old. You know, Medvedev's a 3-time
Yeah.
Australian Open finalist. He's one player I would back to do very well and to go very deep in the Australian Open. So seeing him knocked out in the second round was, you know, both upsetting but a thrilling match nonetheless. And the second match that stood out for me was Monfils versus Taylor Fritz. Just seeing, you know, someone at that age turn the clock around with heavy serves, counter punch moves, just taking a young Taylor Fritz for a ride, right? I thoroughly enjoyed watching both those games. Which one stood out for you, man?
Honestly, as much as I hate to say it because I'm a diehard Carlos Alcaraz fan, I honestly think that quarterfinal against Djokovic was worthy of a final. Match. I think Djokovic said it in his press con as well. I mean, honestly, the first set Alcaraz looked on top, right, and then Djokovic looked like he had an injury, and just like the many times he's done in his career. After getting injured, somehow he just plays better. Like some demon comes out of his body and he's just a beast on the court, right? And it showed. He had his thigh wrapped up, but he was moving even better than he did in the first set, hitting winners left, right and center, serving aces. So I think that was a super match, honestly. That was probably my best match of the tournament this year.
Yeah, man, that's a good one. I remember watching that match and I remember him going down in the first set and I was like, there's no way, he's coming back. For me, at the back of my mind, I'm like, damn, is this the beginning of the end, right? And just to see him turn around, I think there was a point in the fourth set where he was, where I think Alcaraz was up 2 break points and I think if he would have taken that game, he would have probably taken that set. But just the way he saved those 2 break points, came back, won that third set, like you said, absolute beast.
And I feel all of that just comes with experience. You could see when Alcaraz lost the second and third set, he was moved.
Too many
errors. He was shaken. He was absolutely like it was in his head. And
correct.
Djokovic was just the opposite. He was like, okay, this is going to be my game because I can see this guy struggling mentally and I'm just going to stay in the rally and I know he's going to make an unforced error and that's exactly what happened 9 out of 10 times. So good game to watch for sure.
Yeah, I did feel like I was watching the first set semi-final between Sascha and him too. I think now he has a definite Achilles heel, right? Everyone just giving him those drop shots. Oh man, you feel for it, right? The man was trying to make all of it, but you knew there were a couple. He's like, no point wasting my breath on this point. But
and I mean, apart from injury, I also feel these guys are just slightly fitter than
100%
Djokovic right now. It's just age, right? It's what you saw with Nadal for the last 3 years. Now, after Nadal won the Australian Open in 2022, there was a massive decline in the way he played last 2-3 years before he called it quits. And that's solely because his body couldn't take it. And I know Djokovic is probably a better athlete than Federer and Nadal for sure because he's touch wood not had so many injuries. But at the end of the day, age is going to catch up and you can see it. Like today, I mean in the semi-final in the first set against Sascha Zverev, irrespective of his thigh injury, you could also see that he was suffering with the heat.
It was really getting to him. He looked exhausted, man.
Exactly. Like after every point, and I was like, dude, he's barely moved. Like, but why is he panting? So again, a sign of just age and being, I don't know, getting tired faster than the young blokes.
Yeah. Wow, we have our first Grand Slam winner, Jannik Sinner. Ronak, you're a big fan of the Italian. What are your thoughts on the tournament he's had?
Honestly, man, I am super thrilled. I noticed talent in this guy in last year's Australian Open final, honestly. He was 2 sets down against Daniel Medvedev. And I think Medvedev was touted to be the next big thing in world tennis around then, right? I think once the big four started declining, you could see it would probably be Medvedev who would have that world number 1 ranking for a few years. But 2 sets up in the 2024 final against, I don't know, this rookie in that day and age, Jannik Sinner, he came back and he won. And I knew that this guy is going to be special, right? And I just feel like he's more suited to the hard court. He won the Australian Open, he won the US Open last year. You kind of, you back him. Like there are some hardcore players, like there are some clay court and grass court players as well, right? And he just suits the hard court much better than the clay and grass. And I mean, honestly, I think he is definitely, undoubtedly the world's best tennis player today. So he fully deserves it. I think he just dropped like 2 sets throughout the tournament, which says a lot as well. In the semi-final against Ben Shelton, again, he just dropped, he won in straight sets, I think.
Straight sets.
So I don't think he struggled at all throughout the tournament. And I think before the tournament, if people asked me, who is your favorite apart from Novak to kind of reach the final and potentially win it, I would have Jannik Sinner over the likes of Alcaraz for sure, because I just feel Alcaraz, number one, is still too inexperienced, whereas this guy is more calm, collected. You see, he doesn't go crazy on the court, right? He's very he plays very, he's in a composed manner, right? Even when he loses a couple of points, he might get broken, but he's still calm, composed, and you see that he has this aura about him, which makes a difference, honestly.
100%.
So good guy, great game. I think his forehand is absolutely smashing. His service is fantastic. He's got a good height, so which obviously always makes makes you a better tennis player. We've seen that with Goran Ivanisevic and Martin Del Potro and who all, right? So great, fully deserved, man. He honestly deserves it. Great, man. Div, pleasure to have you again. It was absolute pleasure to kind of discuss Australian Open with you. I know your love for racket sports, especially tennis. But any closing comments from you?
No, man, thanks for having me over. I love nerding out about tennis with you. Just leading up to this podcast, it gave me an option also to sort of just go down a couple of rabbit holes on, some of the players and just track their history. So, thank you for pushing and getting and organizing this. It's always so much fun to have you chat and see your passion come through. Excited to be back soon again.
And we will discuss, paddle.
Done.
Cheers, man. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks, man.